The storm pounds against my apartment windows like angry fists, each crash of thunder shaking the thin walls of my cramped studio in Riverside Commons. I clutch my mug of instant coffee, watching rainwater seep through the crack in my ceiling into the bucket I've strategically placed on the floor. Another leak to add to my growing list of problems that my security deposit won't begin to cover. The eviction notice on my kitchen counter seems to mock me with its bold red letters, giving me 3 days to come up with rent money I simply don't have. My shifts at the all-night diner barely cover groceries, and the college loans I can't pay keep multiplying like some cruel math problem I'll never solve. At 22, I feel ancient, worn down by responsibilities that should belong to someone much older and stronger than me. Through the rain-streaked glass, I see a figure stumbling down the alley behind my building, moving wrong, like someone fighting to stay upright. My heart stops when I realize he's bleeding, dark stains spreading across what looks like an expensive white shirt. Every survival instinct screams at me to lock my door and pretend I saw nothing. This is exactly the kind of trouble a girl like me can't afford to get mixed up in. But something about the way he moves, the desperate exhaustion in his posture, reminds me of myself on the worst days. Before I can talk myself out of it, I'm grabbing my keys and running downstairs into the storm, my thin jacket no match for the October cold that cuts through me like a blade. The man looks up as I approach, and even in the dim streetlight, I can see that his face is a work of art carved by pain and something darker. "Hey," I call out over the wind, my voice barely audible above the storm. "Are you okay?" He turns toward me slowly, like every movement costs him, and I get my first clear look at his face. Sharp cheekbones, dark hair plastered against his forehead by rain, and eyes so intensely blue they seem to glow in the streetlight. He's beautiful in the way that dangerous things often are, like lightning or wild animals, and something about his presence makes the air feel electric despite the cold. "I'm fine," he says, his voice rough with pain and edged with an accent I can't place. "Just need to keep moving." But even as he speaks, he sways on his feet, and I can see the blood seeping through his fingers where he's pressing them against his side. The white shirt that probably cost more than my monthly rent is ruined, and there's something in his eyes that speaks of desperation held barely in check. "You're hurt," I say, stepping closer despite every rational thought telling me to run. "You need help." His laugh is bitter, almost angry. "Trust me, you don't want to get involved in my problems." There's warning in his voice, a darkness that suggests I'm staring at someone who's seen things I can't imagine. But I've never been good at taking hints, especially when someone is clearly suffering. "Maybe not, but I can't just leave you bleeding in an alley during a storm." I gesture toward my building, water streaming down my face. "I live right here. Let me at least help you get cleaned up before you decide where to go next." He studies me for a long moment, those blue eyes searching my face like he's trying to solve a puzzle. "Why would you help a stranger? Don't you know how dangerous that can be?" "Everything's dangerous," I reply, surprised by my own boldness. Getting evicted is dangerous. Not eating is dangerous. Sometimes you have to choose which risk you can live with. Something shifts in his expression, a crack in whatever armor he wears against the world. "What's your name?" "Melody," I tell him. "Melody Price." "Melody," he repeats, like he's testing how it sounds. "I'm Gabriel." The way he says it makes me think there's more to that name than he's telling me, but right now it doesn't matter. What matters is the way he's bleeding and the way the storm is getting worse. Gabriel follows me up the narrow stairs to my apartment, and I'm suddenly conscious of how small and shabby my place must look to someone wearing a shirt that costs more than my car. The peeling wallpaper, the mismatched furniture I've collected from thrift stores and curb finds, the constant drip of water into buckets scattered around the room. But Gabriel doesn't seem to notice any of it. His attention is focused inward on staying upright and conscious as I guide him to the couch that doubles as my bed. Sit, I tell him, grabbing towels from my tiny bathroom. Let me see how bad it is. I don't want to impose, Gabriel says, but he's already sinking onto the cushions like his legs won't hold him anymore. You've done enough just getting me out of the rain. You're bleeding on my couch, I point out, kneeling beside him with the towels. I think we're past worrying about imposing. When he lifts his shirt, I have to bite back a gasp. There's a deep gash along his ribs, still bleeding steadily, and bruises that suggest this wasn't some random accident. Someone did this to him deliberately, with skill and intent to cause serious damage. This needs stitches, I say, trying to keep my voice steady. Maybe a hospital. No hospitals, Gabriel says quickly, his hand catching my wrist with surprising strength. No police, no doctors, no questions. Can you help me or not? There's something desperate in his voice that overrides my common sense. I've seen enough late-night movies to know that people who avoid hospitals usually have good reasons, and those reasons aren't always legal. But Gabriel is here, bleeding on my couch, trusting me with whatever dangerous secret he's carrying. I can try, I say, thinking of the first aid training I got when I worked at the summer camp last year. But I'm not a doctor. This could get infected. Could heal wrong. I'll take that risk. Gabriel leans back against the cushions, closing his eyes. Thank you, Melody. You have no idea what this means. As I work to clean and bandage his wound, trying not to think about how close those cuts came to vital organs, I study his face in the lamplight. He's younger than I first thought, maybe late 20s, with the kind of bone structure that belongs on magazine covers. But there's something in his expression, even in sleep, that speaks of violence survived, of a life lived in shadows I can't imagine. There, I say softly, taping the last piece of gauze in place. It's not pretty, but it should hold for now. Gabriel's eyes flutter open, and for a moment he looks confused, like he's forgotten where he is. Then his gaze focuses on me, and something warm spreads across his features. You're still here. Where else would I go? This is my apartment. I settle back on my heels, studying his face for signs of fever or shock. How do you feel? Like I've been hit by a truck, Gabriel admits, trying to sit up straighter. But better than I did an hour ago. He looks around my small space, taking in the buckets catching rainwater, the eviction notice on my counter, the general air of someone barely keeping their head above water. Why did you help me, really? You don't know anything about me. I know you're hurt, I say simply. I know you're scared, even if you're trying not to show it. Sometimes that's enough. Gabriel studies me with those intense blue eyes, like he's seeing something he didn't expect. Most people would have called the police, or just walked away and pretended they never saw anything. I'm not most people, I guess. I stand up, suddenly aware of how intimate this moment feels, how close we are in my tiny apartment. Are you hungry? I don't have much, but I could make some soup. You don't have to feed me too, Gabriel says, but there's something almost hopeful in his voice. I've already taken enough from you. It's just soup, I reply, moving toward my small kitchenette. And besides, you look like you haven't eaten in days. As I heat the canned soup on my ancient stovetop, I'm aware of Gabriel watching me, his gaze following my movements with an intensity that makes my skin tingle. There's something magnetic about him, something that draws me in despite every warning sign my brain is sending. When I turn back with 2 steaming bowls, Gabriel is looking at the eviction notice on my counter. 3 days, he says quietly. That's not much time. No, it's not. I hand him a bowl, trying not to let my embarrassment show. But I'll figure something out. I always do. Gabriel takes a spoonful of soup, and I'm struck by how even that simple action seems elegant when he does it. Everything about him speaks of money and education and a life I've never had access to. "What do you do for work?" he asks. "I wait tables at an all-night diner downtown. It's not glamorous, but it pays most of the bills most of the time." I settle into the chair across from him, trying not to stare at the way his hair has dried into dark waves. "What about you?" Gabriel pauses with the spoon halfway to his mouth, and I see something guarded creep into his expression. "I'm in business. Import, export, things like that." The vague answer feels like a wall going up between us, but I don't push. Everyone has secrets, and Gabriel's are clearly bigger and more dangerous than most. "Must be successful business," I say, gesturing toward his expensive clothes. "That shirt probably cost more than I make in a month." "Money isn't everything," Gabriel says, and there's something bitter in his voice. "Sometimes it just makes you a bigger target." The comment hangs in the air between us, heavy with implications I'm not sure I want to understand. Outside, the storm continues to rage, and I'm suddenly aware of how isolated we are, how completely I've trapped myself with a stranger who could be anyone, could be dangerous in ways I can't imagine. But when Gabriel looks at me, there's nothing threatening in his gaze. If anything, he looks lost, like someone who's been running for so long he's forgotten what he's running toward. "You can stay tonight," I hear myself saying. "If you need to." The couch pulls out into a bed. "And you shouldn't be out in this weather with injuries like that." Gabriel's expression shifts, surprise giving way to something that might be gratitude. "I can't ask you to do that." "You're not asking, I'm offering." I stand up to collect our empty bowls, needing something to do with my hands. "But tomorrow, when the storm clears, I think you should tell me what kind of trouble you're really in." Gabriel is quiet for so long I think he's not going to answer. When he finally speaks, his voice is so soft I have to strain to hear him. "The kind of trouble that follows you wherever you go. The kind that gets innocent people hurt just for being in the wrong place at the wrong time." He meets my eyes across the small space of my apartment. "The kind that means you should probably ask me to leave right now, while you still can." But even as he says it, I can see the hope in his expression, the desperate need for someone to choose him despite the danger, to offer shelter without conditions or judgment. And despite every smart, self-preserving instinct I have, I know I'm not going to ask him to leave. Some connections transcend logic, transcend safety. From the moment I saw Gabriel bleeding in that alley, something fundamental shifted in my world, and there's no going back to who I was before I decided to help a stranger in the storm. The next morning brings silence instead of rain, weak sunlight filtering through my water-stained windows to reveal the damage from the storm. Gabriel is still asleep on my couch, looking younger and less dangerous in the gentle light, dark hair falling across his forehead in a way that makes my chest tight with unexpected tenderness. The bandages I applied last night are still clean and white, and his breathing is deep and steady. Good signs, I hope. I'm making coffee as quietly as possible when he stirs, those blue eyes opening to focus on me with startling clarity. No confusion this time, no disorientation. He knows exactly where he is and why. "Good morning," I say, offering him a mug. "How do you feel?" "Better," Gabriel says, sitting up carefully and testing his range of motion. "Much better, thanks to you." He accepts the coffee with hands that are steadier than they were last night, and I notice details I missed in the darkness and chaos. Expensive watch, gold ring on his right hand, calluses that speak of physical work despite his obvious wealth. Everything about him is a contradiction that intrigues me more than it should. "The storm's over," I observe, settling into my chair with my own mug. "Roads should be clear if you need to be somewhere." Gabriel takes a sip of coffee, studying me over the rim with an expression I can't read. "Actually, I was hoping I could make you an offer." "What kind of offer?" I need a place to stay for a while. Somewhere quiet, off the radar. And you need money to keep your apartment. Gabriel sets down his mug and leans forward slightly. What if I paid your rent for the next few months in exchange for letting me crash here? The proposal catches me completely off guard. That's a lot of money for a couch to sleep on. It's not about the couch, Gabriel says, his voice serious. It's about safety, trust. Last night you helped a stranger without asking questions, without wanting anything in return. That's rare in my world. There's something in the way he says my world that makes me think his world is very different from mine, possibly in ways that should frighten me. But Gabriel has been nothing but polite and grateful, and the idea of having my rent problem solved is almost too good to believe. How do I know you're not some kind of criminal? I ask, half joking but also half serious. Gabriel's expression doesn't change, but something flickers in his eyes. How do you know I'm not? The non-answer sends a chill down my spine, but before I can respond, there's a sharp knock at my door that makes both of us freeze. Melody Price? A voice calls through the thin wood. Police. We need to ask you some questions. Gabriel goes completely still beside me, every muscle in his body tensed like he's preparing to run or fight. The transformation is instant and terrifying, the polite, injured man I've been caring for replaced by something predatory and alert. Stay calm, he whispers, his voice barely audible. Answer their questions, but don't volunteer anything. Don't mention me unless they ask directly. My heart is hammering as I open the door to find two detectives in rumpled suits, badges visible, expressions serious. The older one, a woman with graying hair and tired eyes, steps forward. Miss Price, I'm Detective Martinez. This is Detective Ryan. We're investigating an incident that occurred in this neighborhood last night. Can we come in? Of course, I say, stepping aside even though every instinct is screaming at me to slam the door and run. As they enter, I'm acutely aware of Gabriel behind me, his presence like a loaded gun that could go off at any moment. What kind of incident? Detective Martinez looks around my small apartment, taking in the water buckets, the general shabbiness, and finally settling her gaze on the couch where Gabriel slept. If she notices anything suspicious about the rumpled blankets, or the fact that there are two coffee mugs on my table, she doesn't show it. There was a shooting last night about 6 blocks from here. 3 men dead, 1 missing. We're canvassing the area, seeing if anyone saw or heard anything unusual. The words hit me like ice water. 3 men dead. Gabriel was bleeding last night, injured in ways that suggested violence. Could he have been involved in whatever happened? Could I be harboring someone responsible for murder? I didn't hear anything, I say, surprised by how steady my voice sounds. I was here all night, but with the storm, I had music playing pretty loud to cover the thunder. It's not exactly a lie. I did have music playing, at least until I saw Gabriel in the alley. Detective Ryan speaks for the first time, his voice sharp with suspicion. You live alone, Miss Price? Yes. No boyfriend, roommate, anyone who might have been here with you? I can feel Gabriel's tension radiating behind me, can sense him calculating distances to windows and doors. No, just me. Detective Martinez pulls out a photograph, holding it where I can see it clearly. Have you seen this man? He may be injured, possibly looking for help or shelter. The photo shows a man I don't recognize, older than Gabriel, with cruel eyes and a face that speaks of violence as a way of life. Relief floods through me so quickly I almost stagger. Whatever Gabriel is involved in, he's not the man they're looking for. No, I've never seen him before. The detectives ask a few more routine questions about my neighbors, about any unusual activity I might have noticed, but it's clear they're just going through the motions. When they finally leave, I close the door and lean against it, my legs suddenly too weak to support me. 3 men dead, I say, turning to face Gabriel. Were you there? Were you involved in what happened? Gabriel is standing by the window, his profile sharp against the morning light. When he turns to look at me, there's something ancient in his eyes, something that speaks of burdens I can't imagine. Yes, I was there. No, I didn't kill anyone. His voice is calm, matter of fact. But I was supposed to be the fourth body they found this morning. The admission hangs between us like a blade. I should be terrified, should be demanding that he leave immediately. Instead, all I can think about is how alone he looked bleeding in that alley, how grateful he was for basic human kindness. What happened? Gabriel runs a hand through his dark hair, a gesture that seems more vulnerable than dangerous. I was set up, betrayed by someone I trusted, someone I thought was family. They tried to kill me last night, and they'll try again if they find me. Who's they? But even as I ask the question, I think I already know the answer. The expensive clothes, the cash he's offering for rent, the way he moves like violence is a language he speaks fluently. Gabriel looks at me for a long moment, weighing his words. People who solve their problems with bullets instead of lawyers. People who don't forgive and don't forget. The Mafia, I whisper, the word feeling foreign and dangerous in my mouth. Gabriel's smile is sharp and sad. That's not a word we use, but yes. My family has been in certain businesses for generations. Last night, someone decided those businesses would be better off without me. The reality of what he's telling me crashes over me like a wave. I've been harboring a mafia boss in my apartment, feeding him soup and worrying about his injuries while 3 bodies lay cooling in some warehouse across town. I should be calling the police, should be running as far and fast as I can. Instead, I find myself asking, "Are you safe now? Are they still looking for you?" "They're always looking," Gabriel says. "The question is whether they'll think to look here, in a place like this, with someone like you." Someone like you. The phrase stings more than it should. Someone poor, someone insignificant, someone beneath their notice. But there's no cruelty in the way Gabriel says it, only a kind of wonderment. Like he can't quite believe his luck in finding shelter in my small, humble world. "So what now?" I ask, settling onto the couch where he slept, trying to process the magnitude of what I've gotten myself into. "Do you disappear? Find somewhere else to hide?" Gabriel moves away from the window, coming to sit beside me but maintaining careful distance. "That depends on you. My offer still stands, Melody. I can pay your rent, help you get back on your feet, in exchange for a place to lay low while I figure out my next move. And if your enemies find you here? If they decide I'm a threat that needs to be eliminated?" The questions sound like something from a movie, too dramatic and dangerous to be part of my real life. But Gabriel's expression is deadly serious when he answers, "Then I'll protect you. With my life, if necessary. I won't let anyone hurt you because of me." There's something in his voice when he says it that makes me believe him. A certainty that goes beyond mere words. But it also reveals just how deep the danger goes. How completely my life would change if I agree to this arrangement. "I need to think about it," I say, though part of me already knows what my answer will be. Gabriel has nowhere else to go, and I need the money more than I need safety. Sometimes desperation makes decisions easier than they should be. "Of course, take all the time you need." Gabriel stands, moving with that fluid grace that I now recognize as the product of years navigating dangerous situations. "But Melody, whatever you decide, I want you to know that what you did last night, helping me without knowing who I was or what I'd done, it meant more than you could possibly understand. Anyone would have done the same thing." "No," Gabriel says firmly. "They wouldn't have. Trust me on that." He reaches into his jacket, pulling out a thick envelope that makes my eyes widen. "Regardless of what you decide about letting me stay, this is for last night. For the medical care, the food, the shelter. I stare at the envelope, knowing without counting that it contains more money than I've ever seen at one time. I can't take that. I didn't help you for money. I know you didn't. That's exactly why I'm giving it to you. Gabriel sets the envelope on my coffee table, his movements careful and deliberate. People like me, we're used to everything having a price. Finding someone who acts from pure kindness, it's like finding water in the desert. The metaphor hits closer to home than he probably intended. Looking at Gabriel, seeing the exhaustion and loneliness behind his dangerous exterior, I realize that maybe I'm not the only one who's been thirsty for human connection. Maybe powerful, dangerous men get just as tired of being alone as broke. Struggling women do. The rest of the day passes in a strange bubble of normalcy. Gabriel insists on helping me fix the leak in my ceiling, producing tools from somewhere, and demonstrating skills that suggest he's more than just a businessman in expensive suits. We work together in comfortable silence, and I find myself stealing glances at him when he's focused on the repair work. There's something almost domestic about the scene, like we're a couple fixing up our home together instead of a waitress harboring a fugitive crime boss. There, Gabriel says, testing the seal around the patch he's installed. That should hold through the next storm. Thank you, I say, meaning it more than he could know. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. Gabriel climbs down from the stepladder, wiping his hands on a towel. It felt good to fix something instead of always dealing with things that are broken beyond repair. The comment reveals more about his state of mind than he probably intended. For all his power and wealth, Gabriel sounds like a man who's tired of living in a world where problems are solved with violence instead of solutions. What was it like? I ask as we clean up the tools. Growing up in that world? Gabriel considers the question while putting away the hammer. Lonely, dangerous, full of rules that don't make sense until someone gets killed for breaking them. He looks at me with those intense blue eyes. What was it like growing up in yours? Lonely in different ways, I admit. Foster care, mostly. Never staying anywhere long enough to really belong. Always being grateful for whatever scraps of kindness people threw your way. Something shifts in Gabriel's expression, a recognition that runs deeper than sympathy. We're both orphans then, just from different kinds of families that failed us. The observation hangs in the air between us, creating a connection that transcends our different circumstances. Maybe that's why I felt compelled to help him last night. Why I'm still not calling the police despite knowing what he is. We recognize something fundamental in each other, some shared understanding of what it means to be alone in the world. That evening, as we share another simple meal, Gabriel tells me stories about legitimate parts of his family's business empire. Real estate developments, charitable foundations, even scholarship programs for underprivileged kids. It's a side of organized crime I never knew existed, the way illegal money gets laundered through good works and community investment. It's not all violence and intimidation, Gabriel explains, refilling my wine glass with something that probably costs more than my monthly grocery budget. Most of what we do these days is perfectly legal. The other stuff, it's like insurance nobody wants to use. But it's still there if you need it. It's still there if we need it, Gabriel confirms. The threat of it, the reputation, it keeps honest businesses honest and competitors respectful. His phone buzzes, and I watch his face transform as he reads the message. The relaxed, almost normal man disappears, replaced by someone calculating and cold. What is it? I ask, though I'm not sure I want to know. They found my car? Gabriel's fingers move rapidly over his phone screen with the practiced efficiency of someone accustomed to crisis management, his jaw tightening with each message that illuminates his face in the dim light of my apartment. The blue glow casts harsh shadows across his features, making him look older, more dangerous. like the criminal I keep forgetting he is, until moments like this remind me of the violent world he inhabits. I can see the tension building in his shoulders, the way his free hand unconsciously moves toward where I know he keeps his gun, the subtle shift in his posture that transforms him from the gentle man who held me to the predator who survives in dark places. How bad is it? I ask, moving to sit beside him on the couch. Close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body, close enough to smell the lingering scent of soap from his shower mixed with something uniquely him. His expression grows darker with each passing second, and I can practically see him calculating distances, exit routes, potential threats. Bad. They traced the license plate from the car I abandoned, found blood in the driver's seat from where I was bleeding. Gabriel's voice is clipped, professional, but I can hear the underlying current of frustration and anger. They know I survived the ambush, which means they know I'm somewhere in this area. It's only a matter of time before they start checking every hotel, every hospital, every place where a wounded man might seek shelter. He sets down his phone with deliberate care, but I can see the barely controlled violence in the gesture, the way his knuckles are white with tension. They'll be thorough, methodical. That's how my former associates operate. Gabriel looks at me with an intensity that makes my breath catch in my throat, his dark eyes searching my face as if he's trying to memorize every detail before he has to let me go. There's something almost desperate in his gaze, a vulnerability he's trying to hide behind his usual mask of control. Melody, I need to leave. Tonight. Right now, if I'm being honest. The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I've been expecting them since the moment his phone started buzzing with urgent messages. It's not safe for me to be here anymore. They have resources, connections, people who can track digital footprints and analyze security footage and put together patterns that will lead them straight to this building. And it's definitely not safe for you to be associated with me. He stands abruptly, beginning to pace the small confines of my living room like a caged animal, his movements sharp and agitated. If they find out you helped me, if they even suspect you know where I've been. He doesn't finish the sentence, but he doesn't need to. I can see the fear in his eyes, not for himself, but for me. These aren't people who leave loose ends, Melody. They don't believe in coincidences or innocent bystanders. The practical part of my brain, the part that has kept me safe and solvent through years of careful decisions and risk avoidance, knows he's absolutely right. If dangerous people are looking for Gabriel with the kind of resources and ruthlessness he's describing, the smart thing would be to let him disappear into whatever underground network helps criminals vanish from their old lives. But the thought of him leaving, of never seeing him again, of returning to my quiet, empty apartment where the most excitement I can expect is a new episode of whatever show I'm binge-watching, creates an unexpected ache in my chest that feels almost like grief. Where will you go? I ask, trying to keep my voice steady even though my heart is hammering against my ribs. Gabriel pauses in his pacing, running a hand through his dark hair in a gesture that's become familiar to me over our brief but intense time together. I have contacts scattered across the country, safe houses in cities where my face isn't known, people who owe me favors from the days when I was useful to them instead of a liability. His voice is matter of fact, but I can hear the loneliness underneath it. The weariness of a man who has spent years moving from place to place without ever really belonging anywhere. There are networks for people like me, ways to disappear completely if you know the right people and have enough money to make it worth their while. Gabriel moves to gather his few possessions, the clothes I washed for him, the spare phone charger he borrowed, the book he was reading last night when I couldn't sleep and found him awake on my couch. Everything fits into a single small bag, a tangible reminder of how little roots he's put down anywhere, how ready he always is to run. But first, I need to know if you'll take the deal I offered. The money I'm leaving will cover your rent for 6 months. give you breathing room to find something better, maybe even take some classes or learn a new skill. But after that, you'll be on your own again. He gestures toward the envelope on my coffee table, thick with cash that represents more money than I've ever seen at one time, enough to change my life in small but meaningful ways. I look at the envelope on my coffee table, crisp bills that could solve my immediate problems and buy me time to figure out my future. Then, at the man who's somehow become important to me in less than 24 hours, despite every logical reason why I should keep my distance. There's something about Gabriel that calls to the part of me I've kept carefully buried for years, the part that used to dream of adventure and romance, and a life bigger than the small, safe boundaries I've constructed. At the choice between safety and connection, between the familiar loneliness of my ordinary life and the terrifying possibility of something extraordinary. What if I don't want you to go? The words surprise both of us, hanging in the air like a challenge I didn't know I was brave enough to make. Gabriel freezes in the middle of folding his shirt, his hands stilling on the dark fabric as his eyes find mine across the small space of my apartment. For a moment, neither of us breathes, and I can see him processing what I've just said, weighing the implications and the impossibilities. What are you saying? His voice is carefully neutral, but I can hear the thread of hope running underneath it. The same desperate longing I feel building in my own chest. I'm saying that maybe I don't want to go back to being alone in this apartment, counting pennies and watching other people live their lives while I just exist on the margins. My voice grows stronger with each word, more certain despite the magnitude of what I'm suggesting. Maybe I'd rather take the risk of being with someone dangerous than accept the certainty of being safe and lonely for the rest of my life. I stand up, moving closer to him until we're separated by only a few feet, and the weight of all the reasons this is impossible. I'm saying that maybe I want to come with you, Gabriel. Maybe I want to choose the unknown over the predictable. Choose connection over security. Choose you over everything that makes sense. Gabriel's expression cycles through surprise, concern, and something that might be hope before settling on stern protectiveness. And I can see him fighting between what he wants and what he thinks is best for me. Melody, you don't understand what you're asking, Gabriel says, his voice heavy with the weight of secrets and shadows I can't even begin to imagine. His dark eyes search my face with an intensity that makes me feel like he's trying to memorize every detail, as if he's already preparing to say goodbye. My world doesn't have room for innocence or kindness. It's built on violence and betrayal, on choices that leave blood on your hands and scars on your soul. It would destroy everything that makes you who you are. Your compassion, your ability to see good in people, your belief that everyone deserves a second chance. He turns away from me, staring out the grimy window of my tiny apartment at the neon-lit street below where normal people live normal lives, where the worst decision they might make is what to have for dinner. I've watched it happen before, seen good people get pulled into the darkness and come out changed, hardened, until they don't recognize themselves anymore. I won't do that to you. But I step closer, refusing to let him retreat into that cold place where he thinks he belongs, where he's convinced himself he has to live alone. And your world doesn't have room for anyone who sees you as more than just a walking threat, does it? I challenge, my voice stronger than I feel. Maybe we both need something the other one has. Maybe you need someone who believes you're more than the violence you've done. And maybe I need someone who sees me as worth fighting for. I reach out and touch his arm, feeling the tension in his muscles like coiled wire, the way his whole body seems ready for battle even in this quiet moment. Besides, what's waiting for me here? Eviction notices I can't pay, poverty that keeps me awake at night counting pennies, another dead-end job in another dead-end town where I'll spend the rest of my life apologizing for taking up space. At least with you, I'd be living instead of just surviving. Gabriel covers my hand with his, and the touch sends electricity through my entire body. his palm warm and surprisingly gentle despite the calluses that speak of violence, of weapons held and triggers pulled. There's something desperate in the way his fingers curl around mine, like he's drowning, and I'm the only thing keeping him afloat. "If you come with me, there's no going back," he says, his voice rough with emotion he's trying to hide. "No returning to this life, to this version of yourself who worries about grocery bills and apartment deposits and whether your car will start in the morning. Once you're part of my world, you're part of it forever. The people I work with, the enemies I've made, the choices I'll have to ask you to live with, they become your burden too. There's no such thing as halfway in. No trial period where you can change your mind and go back to being ordinary." His thumb traces across my knuckles, a gesture so tender it nearly breaks my heart. "And I'll have to ask things of you, Melody. Things that might compromise the goodness in you that I—" He stops, swallowing hard, clearly struggling with words he's not used to saying. "The goodness that I've come to treasure more than anything else in this world." "Maybe I don't want to go back," I say, and the words come out stronger than I expected, carrying a conviction that surprises us both. "Maybe I'm tired of being someone who just gets by, who never takes risks, who never fights for what she wants. Maybe I'm tired of being grateful for scraps of affection and settling for safe choices that lead nowhere." I step even closer, close enough that I can see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, close enough to count the small scars that mark his face like a roadmap of violence survived. "I've spent my whole life being careful, being sensible, being the kind of person who doesn't cause trouble or ask for too much. And where has it gotten me? Alone in a crappy apartment, working jobs that barely pay enough to survive, watching other people live while I just exist." My voice grows fiercer, more determined with each word. "Maybe I want to be someone who's worth protecting instead of someone who's always grateful for scraps, always apologizing for having needs, always making herself smaller so other people can be comfortable." I meet his gaze directly, refusing to look away even though the intensity in his eyes makes my heart race. "Maybe I want to be someone who matters enough that a man like you would risk everything to keep her safe." Something fundamental shifts in Gabriel's expression, a crack appearing in the armor he wears against the world, and for a moment I see past the dangerous reputation and the careful control to the man underneath. Lonely, guarded, desperate for connection, but terrified of what it might cost. "You're already worth protecting, Melody," he says, his voice breaking slightly on my name. "You've been worth protecting since the moment you chose to help a bleeding stranger in an alley instead of calling the police or running away like any sensible person would have done. You were worth protecting when you let me into your home, when you trusted me with your safety, when you looked at me and saw something other than a monster." Before I can respond, before I can process the raw emotion in his voice, he's kissing me, and the connection that's been building between us for days explodes into something desperate and consuming and absolutely inevitable. His hands frame my face like I'm something precious, something rare and fragile that might disappear if he doesn't hold on tight enough. And when I kiss him back with all the longing I've been trying to suppress, I taste danger and possibility, and the promise of a life I never dared to imagine. When we break apart, we're both breathing hard, staring at each other with the knowledge that everything has changed between us, that we've crossed a line we can never uncross. Gabriel rests his forehead against mine, his voice rough with emotion and desire and something that might be love. "Are you sure about this? Because once we leave here together, I'll never let you go. I'll never let anything hurt you, but I'll also never be able to let you walk away. This isn't just about tonight or next week. This is about forever." "I'm sure," I whisper, and as the words leave my mouth, I realize I've never been more certain of anything in my life, never felt more like myself than I do in this moment of absolute trust and absolute risk. I choose you, Gabriel. I choose this life, whatever it brings, whatever it costs. I choose us. In the distance, sirens wail through the night like banshees, growing closer to my building, and we both know our time for talking is over. Gabriel's head snaps up at the sound of approaching sirens, his body tensing with the familiar alertness of a predator who has survived countless hunts by trusting his instincts. But there's something new in his posture now, something different from the solitary wariness I've grown accustomed to seeing in him, a protective stance that includes me in its scope, a readiness that encompasses not just his own survival, but mine as well. Time to go, he says. But there's something new in his voice now, too, something that sounds like joy mixed with determination, like a man who has finally found something worth protecting beyond just himself. His dark eyes meet mine across the small space of my apartment, and in them I see not the cold calculation of a criminal planning his escape, but the fierce devotion of someone who has chosen to bind his fate to another's. Ready for your new life? Melody Price? The name sounds different when he says it, not like the identity of someone running from creditors and dead-end jobs, but like the beginning of a story worth telling, the first chapter of an adventure I never dared to imagine. As I grab the few things that matter to me, a photo of my grandmother, the necklace she left me, the journal where I write down dreams I've never shared with anyone, I'm struck by how little I'm actually leaving behind. The furniture came with the apartment. The clothes are worn and forgettable. The life I've built here feels as insubstantial as morning mist in the face of this new reality. I'm leaving behind the poverty and loneliness that have defined my existence for so long, I'd forgotten they weren't permanent fixtures of my identity. And I feel something I haven't experienced in years: hope. Not the desperate hope of someone barely surviving, clinging to the possibility that tomorrow might be fractionally better than today, but the fierce hope of someone who's finally found something worth fighting for, someone worth becoming. Together, we slip out into the night through the back exit Gabriel scouted earlier, moving with the synchronized precision of partners who trust each other completely, despite having known each other for less than a day. The cool air hits my face like a benediction as we leave, behind my old life like a snake shedding its skin, each step taking me further from the woman who was grateful for scraps and closer to someone I don't recognize yet, but already like better. Gabriel's hand is warm and steady in mine as he guides me through shadows and alleyways I never knew existed. His presence a constant reassurance that I'm not just running away from something, but running toward something infinitely better. In his arms, protected by his strength and warmed by his love. Because I realize now that's what this fierce devotion is, what this willingness to risk everything for my safety means. I finally understand what it means to be truly alive. Not just existing from paycheck to paycheck, not just surviving one crisis at a time, but living with purpose and passion and the absolute certainty that whatever comes next, I won't face it alone. Sometimes the most dangerous choice turns out to be the one that saves you from a fate worse than death, the fate of never truly living at all. Sometimes offering shelter to a stranger brings more than just good karma in return. Sometimes it brings the very thing you didn't know you were desperately searching for. And sometimes, love really is worth risking everything for, even when everything includes your life itself, because a life without love isn't really living. It's just marking time until you die.